Today's class, we're going to be talking about how to read the aura, and I will make reference to the colors as well as the number values as well as the chakra values, but predominantly we'll stick to the aura picture. All my readings I do identically, meaning I have a pattern that I follow, and this is in your training manual. It doesn't matter if your manual is 15 years old or if it's 5 years old. It's the same information, but I have there a step-by-step guideline on how to read the aura, and I follow it the same every time. So the first thing I do when I look at somebody's aura is I say, what a beautiful aura. Because I want to put people at ease. And I believe everybody's aura is beautiful, even though sometimes it might look pathetic. Because I certainly know, there's been days where I've been energetically weak and my aura has looked pretty bad. But again, it's a reminder for me to stay on track with, with my health protocols and, with having the positive attitude and everything. So we're all human. Some days our aura is going to look better than others. And to me, this is just part of our learning to understand our ebbs and flows to energy. And that's another thing that we have to understand. If we know that on a universal level that there's this natural biorhythm to the planet, there's a natural biorhythm, there's a natural biorhythm to our own energy. There's so many influencing factors. Plus, we have to recognize that, what we eat affects our energy. The amount of sunlight we get affects our energy. The amount of, vitamins we take in, the amount of rest we get, the amount of water we drink. There's the basic essentials of life. And again, remind me if I forget to do this, but I wrote an article on all the basic essentials of life. So this way, when you're talking to a client, you can refer to, this checklist of what the life essentials are. Because to me, it is important that we talk about these things with people. And I know in the last seminar or the seminar before, I just mentioned, for example, if you're sleeping with somebody who tosses and turns or snores, or you have an animal in the bed, your sleep could be disrupted. Well, your body needs that 7 to 8 hours of repair time. And when we're younger, it doesn't make much of a difference, so much so as we get older. And of course, there's also genetics that come into play. So from day to day, there can be variables, but as you start to study your own energy and your aura, and it should be continual, you should have a roadmap where, at least a couple times a month, you're documenting your energy. And if you want to do it daily, that's great. I, at the beginning, did a lot of documentation of my energy daily, and then I got lazy where now, of course, I probably do it about once every week or two. But because I know where my consistent patterns are in the weakness, then I know that's always what's on my mind for my own self, healing protocols. But again, that being said as well, I'm always looking at my energy when I go on the Biopulsar to tweak what, I've forgotten to do, or to just remind myself of what I need to do, or also to prevent things from happening. And this is another thing, as you progress in life with the Biopulsar, you'll see things that are going on in your life. Because, for example, when I started hitting the premenopausal stage, my root chakra went down by probably 15%. And it was consistent because I didn't quite understand that I was, perimenopausal. And so, therefore, I didn't quite get it. And I didn't realize that you can be perimenopausal for years. So again, it was kind of neat to see this precursor, although I didn't identify with it at that time. So, sometimes you'll see things that are constant and you just have to really dig deep as what it can mean. And this is another thing to remember, is that there are so many possibilities in regards to what it could mean for one person versus another. So therefore, you have to start understanding the color gray, for example, in the hips can mean pain, can mean tension, can mean stiffness, but it can also mean a lot of other things. So the more you understand what the gray color means and you understand the attitude of the organ, then the better the reader you'll become. But if in doubt, ask. And at the beginning, I remember this one woman pointing to her aura picture right where her reproductive area was and said, and it was gray, and she said, "That's my hysterectomy." Well, I hadn't come across it before, nor would have I even thought about this. And then, the next time I saw it, I said to the woman, "Can I ask you a question for research?" And she said, "Absolutely. Everybody likes to be part of research, just so you know." And she said, "Absolutely." And I said, "Have you had a hysterectomy?" And this continued. Every time I saw it, I asked that question. Well, of course, when you have, 5 or 10 people saying, yes, they've had a hysterectomy, you know that this is a reality of what we see in the auric field. Now, I can also share with you, I came across a woman who had green in her reproductive organ, and she actually said, "Oh, my hysterectomy isn't showing up. Recently, I had a hysterectomy." And I said, "Oh, well, that's very interesting, because normally when we see a hysterectomy, we see it as gray." And then intuitively, my intuition said, ask her how she feels about it. So I said, "How do you feel about getting a hysterectomy?" And she said, "Oh, I was so glad when the doctors ripped everything out. I was so done with everything. I didn't want any more children. It was just a nightmare. My period was just a nightmare." Versus the next time I came across a woman who had gray in the reproductive area, I said, "Can I ask you for a question for research?" She said, "Yes." I said, "I can see your hysterectomy. How did you feel about it?" And she said, "Well, I was very sad because I wanted more children. It wasn't a choice." So again, had I not asked those questions in the form of research, I would have never gained the insight and information as to what the possibilities are. And that's why I always tell everyone, I don't know everything, but it's because of my accumulated data and good memory that I could start to piece things together over time. And that's sort of, one of the things that I encourage you guys is whatever your intuition says, test it out. And you don't have to say, "It means this." Just say, "Can I ask you a question for research, in our experience?" And you've also got your training manual. There's nothing wrong with opening up to the page of the organ and pulling information from that. Or if you have additional softwares like the Oroscope, like the Great Holistic Therapy Assistant Program, then you can, utilize these different softwares to give you support in your analysis. Because the different software, some are more psychological, even the Chromalive has that psychological perspective in there, and some are more diagnostic. So, again, there's just a lot of great information in all the, the different softwares, as well as, the different booklets and materials that I've been sharing with you over the years. And I'll continue to share. But this is also reminding me to, focus on certain things to share with you guys when we cover it in these online trainings. Because a lot of times I send out these forms and people don't always realize how to use them. So, my goal is to, I've got a bunch of things on the side here. My goal is to, just, refer to things so you can refer to those pages. And if you can't find it in your own repertoire files, then let me know and I can send it to you, or I'll send it to you as a group. Now, I sent you guys a couple of emails this week with some stuff in it, so hopefully you got everything. Okay, so we're going to continue. I'm just going to take a little break. Keep my throat wet. Okay, so in front of us we have the picture of a person, as well as to the right we have the chakra values, and to the left we have the organ values. I'm going to keep everything up on screen, so this way, again, whatever softwares you have, I'm just going to kind of refer to different ways that we can view the information and correspond, and correspond the data, because a lot of times when I am doing an assessment, I flip back and forth to my different information sources to validate things, because I build pictures. So for example, if I see that somebody's heart chakra is weak, and specifically their heart organ is weak, then I'm also looking at the complete heart chakra area and all the organs that relate to that to make that picture. And this is one of the things that I think is so phenomenal with AuraMed, is that the recipe that has created the system is so intricate, because no organ works independent of the brain. So there's data that's pulled from the brain that combined makes that organ information. As well, no organ works independent of a network. So again, there's a recipe behind, you know, the measuring that we don't understand, because that's obviously privy to Auramed. But nonetheless, there's a lot more that's compiled in the data than we think about. And this is why it's more accurate than most systems. And in fact, I would say pretty well all of them that are out there, because most systems rely on a single point probe. And that single point probe isn't going to be able to give you all the data because they're only measuring one zone, versus, you know, with our system, there's that accumulated data that gives us the accuracy of an organ measuring. So therefore, again, because we have a lot more data that's being compiled simultaneously, there's less error margin. And with single point probe units, it's quite time consuming to get a measuring of the whole. And some people, I actually have had several readings on different systems that have the wrist belt where they put a probe in the belt. Well, if you actually watch them put it on your wrist, they don't even typically line it up. And because all your energy channels are in your wrist, there's 12 of them, if they put it differently on a different time or it moves, then the reading is going to shift, and the diagnosis that they've come up with, which is pages and pages of information, isn't going to be accurate. And, you know, I know a lot about the different systems that are out there, and one of the reps for another system bought the Biopulsar, and she said, Suzanne, my system only measures a moment in time, but what really makes it a good system is it drives nutraceuticals for people to make money. So it wasn't the diagnosis per se, but it was the opportunity to teach people how to take, you know, vitamins and supplements that would support their energy. And of course, when they came back and got another reading, the reading was quite different, because again, you know, if they weren't measuring the same channel, or because it was just an energy channel, you're not going to get the evidence of every organ and gland. So be proud that you guys are Biopulsar practitioners, because our system is quite superior in so many ways. You know, but again, this session isn't for selling you the Biopulsar, because you already have one. Rather, you know, this is about reading the aura. So we'll go back to the aura. So the first thing that I always say to people is, what a beautiful aura. Even though there might be areas that are less than beautiful, I still want them to feel comfortable. And I'll also just mention to you that sometimes, you know, especially if you're doing events, you might have more than one people coming together as a group, and sometimes there might be somebody who's scared to get a reading. I just always let them know that, you know, there is no pressure to get a reading, that they can come back at any time to get a reading. I don't like to force people to get a reading. I want it to be their free choice. And sometimes you'll get people asking questions like, you know, I don't want to see the negativity. And it's sort of like, well, there is nothing that's negative in my eyes. It's just about polar opposites. And, you know, this is one of the things about color. For example, red is positive and passionate, you know, or passionate and you know, motivated on the positive side. On the negative side, yes, it could be unmotivated and angry, but it's all the red energy. It's how you use it. And sometimes anger isn't a bad thing, because it can drive you. And the more characteristics you learn about the color, and again, it doesn't matter how old your training manual is, there is information on the positive and the negative each color, that the more you study it, then, you know, the more refined of a reading that you can do. But learn some of the basics. So, and the basics are the typical characteristics that we judge in our personality, from, you know, that practicality to being impractical, you know, from the passion to being unpassionate. And sometimes just by putting the word "un" in front of it is how you can change the word from being, you know, being a positive, again, saying passion, to being unpassionate. Okay, so sometimes those words that you memorize, you can just stretch them to be either at a hypo level or a hyper level. Okay, make sense so far? Awesome. So once I tell somebody how beautiful their aura is, the next thing I like to do is talk about the colors in their brain area. And the colors in the brain area, now let's see if I can do this. I'm gonna use my little spotlight arrow, and I'm going to come here and let's see if I can spotlight it. Oh, no. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Okay. No, I got to go back to my little tool here. Hang on. Oh, I did that wrong. Here we go. Okay, hopefully that works this time. So what I'm looking at, no, it still didn't work. Okay, third time lucky. We'll do it that way. There we go. So let's see if I can do that. Okay, doesn't want to do it. So I'm not going to worry about it then. So above the head, we see this indigo blue color combined with a lot of white. And in this area here, we can see another little bit of a shade. And so when you're working with the colors, you can always scroll down. And so we can see the back of the head is that dark blue, and the turquoise that I'm seeing is coming from the ear. Okay, and if I scroll down a little more, the eyes are green and the nose is pink. So that gives us a lot of information of what's going on in the brain area as well as the face area. But primarily I'm looking at the brain frequency. Now I call this the umbrella, which is this indigo color that's above here. And if you're in doubt what color it is, just open up your number value sheet and you will see the number value. And this is where you have to start memorizing that when you see the color values at 9 or 10, you know it's going to be white. It's not gray. Okay, versus if you see gray, it's going to be a number value under 1. Whereas we can see when I was showing you the indigo, that was the back of the head, and it's close to the number value 8. So when we see number values between 6 and 7, that's in that turquoise range. Between 7 and 8, we're going into the blues, and closer to 8 will be the indigos. And then from indigo, it goes into the violet, magenta, pink, and then white. So you can sort of see how the scale graduates. And also in your training manual, you did get this sheet that gives you that color grid in comparison to the number values and where it would fall in the chart. That's in the newer manual, it's on page 154. In the older manual, I can't tell you what page number that would be. But these number values, because sometimes I get people not understanding if it's purple versus a dark, dirty gray. So again, if you look under the number values, if it would be purple, it would be higher than that, you know, or around that 8 value, versus gray, it would be under 1. That's when you would know if it's a gray versus a purple. Similarly with the reds, you know, versus purple, sometimes it's hard to make out that exact color. But we can see that the brain is housing a lot of high frequencies, mainly white. So this would tell you that this person does have a high spiritual consciousness. Now, what other words, and we're just going to open this up because again, I want you guys to participate in this as well. Is there any other words that come to your mind when it comes to the color white?
Enlightenment?
Absolutely.
Spirituality.
Yes? Yeah.
Susan, when I see the 3 white rounded orbs above the white, like the umbrella part to the right, like I see that as other spirit beings being around them. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's kind of advanced training, but we'll jump into that since Nancy brought it up. But yes, it could represent angels. It could represent, if you see flying saucers, then sometimes it's contact with aliens. When you see the white as wings, it's angels. And because of the way I do readings, this is information other people have shared with me. However, there's been instances where I have seen angel wings, and I've asked the person if they feel guided by their angels right now, and absolutely they do. So again, if you see something, don't hesitate to ask, because you never know, what it could represent. And, the people that told me about the aliens, they resided in Nevada. So of course, that's where there's been more, research in regards to alien encounters. So there is different possibilities. Similarly, lower frequencies can also show up in the, in the area. I've had where entities will show up, around the shoulder area. So again, you just have to ask. And in fact, there's just so many things that you can surmise, and I'll share with you as we go into the different areas of the body of some of the other personalities. Now, if you don't believe in these things, don't worry about it. It's not for you. Because I tell everyone, when I first started with the system, I also said to the universe, God, please don't show me any illness. I want to do pretty readings. And so for the first year, I was an aura consultant. That's mainly what I did. And then I realized if I was going to teach on this subject, because people would ask me a lot of questions, especially obviously Biopulsar owners. And I, prayed to the universe and I said, God, I think I need to understand more about what I'm seeing in the pictures. And I could tell you the next day I started seeing everything. So I pretty well have seen everything on it, and I trust, again, my intuition that has guided me to ask the various questions. So the more you work with your intuition, the more you'll be picking up on the client's energy and what some of the possibilities may mean in regards what it means to them.
Suzanne, sorry, could you just show me where the angel wings are?
Yeah, it's not in this picture, Gabriella. But it would show up in wings, and usually in white, because white is the highest frequency. That would indicate that angelic source. But it could also be in pink, because pink is also people who do service work. And there are different angels that are at our beck and call. So there is the possibility you may see it in wings in different colors, but usually you would see the image, and it's that image that would just kind of hit you on the head almost.
And that's on the aura display.
On the aura display only. The aura display gives you a lot more information on a psychosomatic level. You're not going to get that information from the chakras or the organ graphs. For me, I love the aura software, because that is what I was trained on first and foremost, but that is where I derive most of my information from, because the graphs tell me the vitality of the organ on a health level, but the color tells me the constitution, which is connected to the emotions, the mentality, the spirituality, as well as the physicality. Okay.
But how would we know if she's of a spiritual nature, or if she's getting, if she's getting headaches, for example, or high sensitivity to the environment, seeing the light?
You ask.
Oh, yeah. What if it? Okay.
Yeah. Now, unless you work with your intuition will guide the way, because sometimes I will get different psychosomatic information that just pops into my mind of what I should say. So sometimes I'll read it as a headache, and sometimes I'll, read it as, psychic potential. I don't know what I'm going to say to each individual when I do a reading. I let my readings unfold the way they need to unfold. But this is how you gain the experiences, by asking questions. And again, if you're concerned about your intuition telling you something bizarre, again, form it in the way of questions. And I remember even early on in my career, I was doing an event, and this woman came to me, and I got a vision in my head. And the vision was of her mother coming to her bed, but her mother was dead. And I said to her, I see your mother coming to your bedside, but she's passed on, hasn't she? And she said, yes. And she started crying, because she actually could see her mother coming to her bed, but she didn't know what her mother wanted. So again, it was a vision that came to me. I feel very guided by God, and so therefore I trust the visions that I get. But I probably didn't at the beginning, but eventually I let go. And as the saying goes, when you let go, you let God. you know, meaning God will come in and guide you.
Susan, can I
Yes.
ask a question?
Yes.
The only aura that I found with one only color, all of the aura, it's turquoise. Okay, it's the only monochromatic aura. That's also related with enlightenment, no?
Well, it can.
Yeah. Because usually it's yoga teachers and people like that in events I go, and yoga teachers and people who work with meditation a lot. I have in these 14 years, 5 or 10 completely turquoise auras with 1-2% differences on the chakras. They are the perfect flow of energy. They have the perfect flow of energy. First time it happened to me, I thought the Biopulsar was with a problem. And I asked her, and she told me, no, I'm a Kundalini yoga teacher. And this last 9 months, I have been working on me to put myself like that. So I like that advice.
Yeah. And again, this is where you can rely on your intuition, because sometimes when I see a totally turquoise aura, which is optimal, this is what we're looking for. And I've seen it on myself. And those are the times that I feel very enlightened is the best word to describe it. When my whole aura is turquoise, everything is just going with the flow. I mean, I really go out and buy a lottery ticket when you're seeing that. But my point is, I've also seen people that have a lot of turquoise, and I have gotten a sense that's an imbalance, because they're in a state of balance. That where is the emotions of the red? You know, where is the passion of the red? Where is the, you know, enthusiasm of the inner child of the orange? Where is the yellow knowledge? When I see people so contained in one color, I also have to ask myself, you know, is this, you know, something that is conducive to their energy? And I always think about my first person, where I felt that he was really holding his energy to create such a good energy. And I said, I feel like kicking you in the pants, because you're in this state of balance.
I do that. Sometimes I do that too, in order to something appear when I see, because there are people that can control the in comas, but with the meditation skills and things like that, they can give you a misreading.
Yeah,
I also know that. And sociopaths also appear completely turquoise. I had a sociopath that it was completely turquoise.
Yeah.
And I thought, because it doesn't feel anything, so it's normal also.
Yeah. So one way you can tell if it is a balance, touch their hand. If their palm is sweaty, then it means it's an imbalance. Okay. And this is another thing, when you use cream on the hands, or you use gel on the hands, or you use water on the hands, you will create more of that turquoise energy in the aura. So you're inducing a balance, but that is not natural, because if you've had to use the cream, the gel, or water, or anything to lubricate the hand, you've done it because there was an internal dryness and you couldn't get a contact. And you got to remember that when there's an internal organ that's dry, you will see symptoms of that dryness somehow. So look at their lips, look at their skin, touch their hand. And if their hand is very dry with no water or perspiration on it, there has to be a grip. Okay, if there's no grip on the hand, then that means that they are internally dehydrated. So don't kid yourself. There's a lot of dehydration going on. And, you know, again, I'll always repeat things, because I want you guys to understand that when there's internal dryness, it will be reflected in the hands. And there's no way around it. When I am dehydrated, I will see several organs go gray. You know, and so therefore it's a reminder of myself that I'm not eating enough water foods, I'm not drinking enough water, or I'm under a lot of stress. And that stress could be resultant of not sleeping properly, not being, athletic enough, not going outdoors, getting the sunlight. Again, it becomes the basic essentials of life that we're depriving ourselves of that's creating that internal dryness. So you have to probe people. You've got to ask. And again, whenever you have to manipulate the hand by putting anything on the hand to get that contact, you will get a false reading. Now, when I put the gel on, you got to put very little on, and I get people to rub their hands together for about 20 seconds to dry out the, to dry off some of the lubrication, so you're not going to get such a false reading. But again, if you see that fully turquoise aura, you've got to probe to find out why. And people who often have an emotional imbalance, just so you know, will show turquoise.
Yeah.
Okay. And I had one gentleman where he was turquoise, and he sweated profusely. He actually had to walk around with a towel because he was always sweating. Which I'll also mention one other thing, remind me to mention it. But because of the fact that he was walking around that towel, I found that very interesting. And as we got into a deeper conversation, he stopped sweating. And I said to him, I understand what's happening now. You are finally expressing yourself, that your water element, because water is the emotions. So as soon as he started talking about his emotions, his water element stabilized. And so therefore, I started to see other colors showing up, and he stopped perspiring. Now, also in my experience, if you do a reading on somebody who drinks a lot, and, we may or may not call them an alcoholic, because, obviously there are some people that might come to you that have drank quite a bit the night before, but you will also see alcoholics will perspire profusely through their palm because their body's trying to release the toxins. Okay, so again, that could contribute to another possibility why we see turquoise when somebody does perspire a lot and their body's trying to release a lot of toxins. And again, I can remember, one story of my reading this guy, and he was all turquoise other than his pancreas was white. And, I was talking about sugar, and he said, no, he doesn't consume sugar. And, again, my intuition said, and it actually said wine. And I said, do you drink a lot of wine? And again, I said, do you mind my asking you a question for research? Do you drink a lot of wine? And he said, yeah, he drank a bottle of wine daily. And so, again, in his perspective, it wasn't an issue. It wasn't related to, sugar. But when I told him that, with every bottle of sugar, there's probably a full cup of white sugar in it, then, again, people have to understand that, there are things that we do that will heighten our different energies. But because he had that solid blue aura, and when he told me that he drank a bottle of wine, one aspect of my dialogue with him was, his ability to express himself. Because we have to understand, when people are containing their aura, they can use drugs or alcohol as a way to release their emotions. Okay? And just so you know, alcohol is typically related to the orange energy, and the orange energy is all about emotions. And this is why you'll notice when people are drinking, they become more friendly, they become more open in their dialogue. They're free-flowing because as soon as that orange energy gets heightened, whether it's with alcohol or, with natural orange people, then they'll be free-flowing with their energy. And that's why when you see an aura that is predominantly orange, they will be the ones that will be constantly talking, and they talk about nothing. They're chatterbugs because they're very social energies, and they'll often have what I call verbal diarrhea. Okay, that's when you see an aura that's predominantly orange. But what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the aura picture now, and I'm just going to mute everyone again until we have the next. Oh, it said somebody was waiting. Hopefully I got them. Sorry, I just want to make sure that I don't leave anyone out. So when we look at the color combination, we can deduce that this is somebody who's very spiritual minded. And again, you know, in the manual, I do make reference to color in quite a few situations. So therefore you get that color perspective in the different handouts that I've created for you. And I'm just going to grab a couple of them. But, and some of the new sheets, for example, this one gives you a color grid and it goes into the different aspects of the colors. So for example, with white, physically that's extremely high energy. It's also an abundance of energy. It could also relate to energy congestion, excess air, poison, and pain. However, mentally and emotionally, it's high consciousness, spiritual knowledge, insightfulness, but it also on the negative side could be escapism, flighty, and forgetful. Okay, and remember, this information is in all the data that I've given you. You just have to constantly read it and reread it to really get it to stick in your memory. Now, on a soul and spiritual level, it's a godly energy, godly self, bliss, purity, cleansing, enlightenment, light work, astral energy, and you know, very, very high spiritual abilities. Okay, so with this person, I think we can all surmise that there's a lot of spiritual vibration to the colors above her head. Indigo is also a very psychic energy. And indigo is understanding, empathy, compassion. It's a very insightful energy. And in fact, I always relate the indigo energy to a brilliant mind because they're the outside of the box thinker. Okay, sort of like an Albert Einstein energy. And I will say that to people, oh, you know, you've got an energy similar to Albert Einstein. Even though I've never met Albert Einstein, it's my color association to him is that indigo. Because whenever somebody comes up with a thought or an idea that hasn't been discovered yet, that is the indigo energy. And this is why, for example, you know, the telephone was, developed in 3 countries simultaneously because it was out there in the ether, that psychic level of the indigo. It was on another dimension because obviously it hadn't manifested in our third dimensional realm yet. And so therefore, when people tap into that psychic energy and there's information that's released out into the world, whether it's somebody who starts the thought or whether it's a godly consciousness, all of a sudden people will pick up on that vibration when their brow chakra is heightened. And this is why I'm sure all of you have developed things in your life only to not manifest it with your red energy, to then see that that somebody else developed it. Okay, that's because we all have that capability to tap into that indigo consciousness, but it's what you do with it that matters. And this is why, again, when all your chakras are in balance, and especially when your root chakra supports your higher chakras, then you can manifest your creations versus if your root chakra is weak. I kind of look at it as, you know, if your root chakra is half of where it should be, then you're only going to manifest half of your ideas or a portion of your ideas. The lower the root chakra, the lower it tells me you're a manifester. However, it doesn't mean you can't manifest. It's just that if you have a strong root chakra, you'll manifest a lot more. And this is one of the reasons why I work a lot with red, because I am a manifester. And I know if I don't have enough red energy, half of what I say I will not be able to manifest. And I want my odds to be good. So therefore, I work a lot with red to make sure that I can manifest all my creativity. And I do get a lot of information channeled to me. And this is why I'm always making these other handouts. I'll go, oh my goodness, this is a good idea. You know, but if I didn't have the root chakra supporting me, I wouldn't create it. And so therefore, again, it's always about a balance. But when you see that somebody has that high consciousness above their head, then you can understand that, again, if those colors are not showing up in the body, there absolutely is a disconnect. I like to look at the colors that are above the head versus the colors that are in the physical body. If they don't match, then I know that the brain and the spirit is not necessarily matching the physicality and the earth aspects of that person. Does that make sense? Okay, good. But again, because we're just getting to know this client, I would be saying everything on a positive level. And this energy I got very excited to read because I don't often see the brow and crown chakras in the 90s. You do come across it, but it's not like you see it every day. And sometimes you don't see it the same way with the colors that are above the head. But because she had this bloom of indigo in what I refer to as the umbrella, I knew she was very psychic. And I actually, it was one of my last readings of the day, and I think I had done about 20 readings that day. And I can also share with you, my first reading is never as intuitive as my last one. By the time I've filled my day full of readings, you know, I get out of my mental mind fairly quickly once I start readings, and I go more into my own intuitive energy, and my brow chakra right away becomes heightened. And in fact, when I teach, my solar plexus is usually my strongest, but when I do readings, my brow and my crown become my most powerful chakras. So because when I saw her brow and her crown super high, and because I saw all this indigo and white above her head, I got very excited. And I said to her, "You're very intuitive, aren't you?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "No, I mean, you're really intuitive." And she said, "Yes." And I said, "No, you're really, really intuitive." And I said, "Okay, you're very psychic." And she went, "Yes." And I said, "What do you do?" And I think I mentioned her last week, and that was why she was in my mind to show you guys. But she was a nurse by day, but she helped guide people after death because she could see their spirit leaving their body. And so she was actually a light worker in that sense. She was helping people go to the light. So I thought it was just absolutely you know, beautiful. And a lot of people who have this indigo in their thoughts are people who are very empathetic and often work in industries where they're working with people. And that industry can be anything to do with mental health, you know, obviously nursing, anything to do with that emotional side, because they have a very deep understanding. Now, also that indigo energy tells me, because she's very empathetic, she probably doesn't watch TV. Okay, because when you see somebody's brow chakra in the 90s, when they watch TV, they're so empathetic, they can pick up on a lot of information. So for example, I kind of make this association of you can become anything on TV. So if they're talking about a murder, you can feel the energy of the murderer, and you can feel the energy of the victim. Because when that energy is so heightened, that is the energy that feels very, very deeply. Okay, so you can ask them, do you avoid TV? Do you avoid news? Because again, they can get so wrapped up in that. Okay, and a lot of intuitives will pick up the energy off their client, but their client ends up feeling much, much better after the session, but they feel much, much worse. So I always ask the question, do you feel drained when you're around people? And a lot of intuitives will not do events because they can't handle the energy of so many people in the room. So again, because I understand that intuitive energy, that indigo energy, I can ask a lot of questions in relationship to that. Okay? And a lot of indigo people, when they're young, they get picked on, because they don't know how to defend themselves. And again, because the indigo energy is the energy of a soul understanding, they believe it's their karma to handle these things. And karma is learning a lesson, but learning from it and moving forward, that you don't keep replaying the same program over and over and over again. Which we're actually just, so you know, coming out with karma sprays that are to help realign people's karmic programs so they can release some of the hindrances that they're attached to. And I'm very excited about this product line because I think it's something that's necessary, because the patterns that people need to release are definitely needed in our world today. So I'll tell you more about that as we get closer to it. But again, just going back to the indigo energy, because they're what I call the ultra sensitive. And also, as you get to know the color combinations, when people have colors that are aligned with each other, then they represent that frequency even more so. So for example, the white and the indigo are of the higher spiritual colors, so therefore the connection is very deep in regards to this person's spirituality. And the spirituality can be, multi-dimensional, because it could be somebody who is very religious in nature and somebody who's very, what we call, metaphysical. To me, I don't get caught up on that, so much, other than the fact I'll say to people, you're very spiritual minded. I kind of use that word in the broad sense. But because of the indigo energy, I know that this person was probably at this level of empathy as a child as well. And as you actually work with children who have a similar energy, often they will see into different dimensions, meaning they can tap into seeing possibly dead people and angels and other aspects, because the brow chakra connects to every dimension beyond 3D. So the different dimensions connect to the different possibilities. And I remember one time I was taking a flight to the US, and I had this gentleman beside me, and we started a conversation, and he asked me what I did, and I told him I did aura readings and I did color therapy, and he kind of looked a little bit quirkily at me and said, "Can I ask you a question?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "My daughter has an invisible friend. What do you make of that?" And I looked at him and I said, "You already know who it is, don't you?" And he said, "I think it's my brother who passed away 6 months ago." And I said, "Okay, there you got your answer." Okay. Children are so capable of seeing auras and energies that we don't typically see as a normal human being. And so therefore, often they're repressed and told, not to see things. However, if they hang on to that indigo energy, then they can develop it in a very proactive way. But it's when it's repressed or not understood by the family environment, then, again, this can cause a lot of psychological damage, because they're told that, hearing voices isn't realistic. And so therefore they often get misdiagnosed as schizophrenic. Okay, so understanding this energy is very important. Now, this woman was actually I think she told me, a 6th generation psychic. And so therefore she was trained in a family of intuitives. So she was able to grow her gift, which is probably why we see her brow and crown in the high dimension, in the high, percentages. But again, if you don't have the chakra software, you can rely on it through the color language. So we had a lovely chat about, her intuitive abilities, and the fact being an empath, there was some struggles that she had in life, and then also seeing that she had a blockage in her root chakra, and the blockage is the gray that we're seeing in there. So as soon as I see any dark, dirty color or any low frequency color in the root, I already know that there's something that's gone on, and probably at a very young age, because this is where a lot of our programming happens, that disturbed her root chakra. And this could also be another reason why, her brow chakra is at a heightened level. This was a short consultation, unfortunately, but there is the chance I might be able to do her again. And when I do her again, then I'll be able to access more information. But as I mentioned, when children are high in nature of that indigo energy, then there could be some stuff that could have happened in the life and in their life that created that low root and that higher crown chakra. And here's an example where I did this 16-year-old girl who had a very similar energy to this, not as high, but nonetheless very similar. And I said to her, because of your indigo energy, people will pick on you. And I said, they will take advantage of you. Do you understand what I mean? And she said, yes, it's already happened. Because the intuitives, the indigo people, will often be prey for sexual predators. And when you see children who have that high indigo, you have to let them know that there is that possibility that people will pick on them, that they have to learn how to shout out. And I say that because, you know, again, understanding energy, because I'm very much into my yellow, and my yellow was strong as a child, if anybody would have touched me inappropriately, I would have screamed. But I know the indigo energy would not. And so therefore we have to protect the indigo children, because again, they may feel that it's their karma, and it's not their karma. Their karma is to actually learn how to defend themselves. And this is why when we see the root chakra weak, or that disturbance, this, you know, low frequency band in the root, this person may not know how to speak up for themselves. Okay, make sense? Okay, so any questions so far? Anything anybody want to add in regards to experiences? Okay, and you might have to unmute yourself, because I muted the group.
Hi, Susan. I have a question.
Sure.
How you doing? It's Hanuman. I haven't got my camera on.
Yes. Hi,
Hi.
Hanuman.
Hi, guys. Quick one. I'm just wondering, because I've been using the device quite a lot, and I'm finding a consistent grey spot, and I feel it's the neck, which is really hard for the finger to reach.
Yep.
Is there any solution that you have to that other than pushing? Because I was thinking that if there was a little extenders with a spring in it, you could probably pick it up.
Yeah.
Is there any attachments or anything like that I could get just to pick up some of these? Because I find the small intestine and the neck are ones which I'm constantly having to sort of like roll an extra millimeter to touch.
Yeah. So one of the things I'll share with you, and I haven't been to Australia, Hanuman, so I can't speak of the energy. You'll be able to share that with me. However, I can tell you, because I've traveled worldwide with the Biopulsar, I've noticed that there's some things that happen in certain countries. So in North America, it is quite common that the mouth flatlines, because the North Americans don't speak their truth. And so we have to look at some of these things, where when I was in Norway, nobody had a problem with their neck. Nobody had a problem with their mouth, because if you know any Norwegians, they'll actually say whatever's on their mind, because, you know, that's the kind of culture they are. They're very, you know, open-minded. Yeah. So sometimes we see things in certain areas that relate to the social aspect of the society. So the neck is that stress barometer between the spiritual and the physical worlds. So again, what you may want to do is have conversations with people and see if you get that validation, because the hand plates are based on the normal hand size within that hand range. Okay, so when there's a sensor that's lower, that sensor is lower for a reason. Okay, right. And there should be more flesh in that area, because if you look at the palm, and actually if you turn it sideways, you can see some areas have more padding than other areas. And in the center, you'll even see a lot of people, the center of their palm goes in. And I actually did a whole bunch of models, at least 10 of them, and I can tell you that every single one of them, their palm went in so deep compared to the average hand, because they were all starving themselves. So again, what you need to do, Hanuman, is just sort of do a bit more research in regards to your society and what could be norm. Similarly, one time I was doing an event in a acupuncturist office, and I had done a few events already there, but all of a sudden this one day, every single person that I put on the system, it was almost like, well, it wasn't almost like, but their small intestine was white. And it surprised me, because these were people I had done before where there wasn't any white in their pancreas, but every single person that came in. Now, I actually ran out of ink for my printer. At the time, I was carrying my printer around with me to print off the pictures. And I called up Nikolai, and I was only about 10 minutes away. And I said, Nikolai, can you grab a color cartridge and bring it to, where I'm at? So he brought it in. And as soon as he came in, I went, stick your hand on the system. Well, because he had just walked in and he put his hand on, his small intestine was normal. So I just kind of reflected a minute, and I just got this information that there was an energy vortex in the room. or in the area. And I trusted that. And I don't know if Diana's on, but Diana, I think, had also the same instance where in the state of Ohio, she phoned me up saying, I think one of my sensors is broken. And I said, oh, which one? And I think it was the descending colon or one of the colons. And she said, everyone I put on there, it's in white. And I said, just ask yourself if there's a vortex in your area. And she's very, very gifted with her psychic abilities. And she said, yes, she sensed that. And it took 3 weeks for that energy fluctuation to disappear, where she could start picking up the normal reading in that organ, which again is indicating to you that, you know, there's these natural biorhythms of the planet. And of course, there can be unseen, you know, frequencies that just sort of zone into an area like Sedona, you know, all the vortexes that are there. I mean, it gets interesting when you travel and you see different things. Similarly, I was in New York before 9/11, I think about by 3 months. And, you know, definitely there was a lot of dark red energy that I was seeing in people's auras because of what was coming. You know, and so it's really interesting even what a society can attract. And again, if this is sort of a norm that could be, you know, in your area, Hanuman, this could be one of the reasons why you're seeing this. So continue to do the research and get back to me on that, because again, you know, maybe there is more underlying reason. And of course, you can bypass that by, you know, having them press their hand more so in that area. But if you see that the registering is still at a low frequency, then you know that it has nothing to do with the sensor, because this is another thing you guys can do is just by, if an area is weak, if you press down on that area more so, are you actually getting, you know, are you actually getting a stronger reading that indicates the normal range, or is it still within the lower range of hypoactivity? Okay. Okay, I unmuted it, or I muted everyone because I was hearing some background noise. So did that make sense?
Yeah, it's just that I also have the two hands, so one of them seems to work more than the other.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of like, I prefer the smaller one because I've got a smaller hand from what I can tell.
Right.
But I find when I move to the bigger one, I pick those up. And then I miss out some ones on the lower one, like the lower, like the back ones.
So one of the things that you should do is move your hand in a couple positions and just sort of take a couple scans, tabulate the data on both the hand sizes, correlate the data from both, and note what the variables are, and then discern which hand plate will be better for you. So we have to understand, I asked the manufacturer the reason why they didn't make movable sensors, and she was concerned that over time these sensors would break, where she wanted to have the Biopulsar durable. So what she did is she married it up to what would be considered the average of most people. And again, there can be some variables, and we have to start looking at things. Now, because I've worked with both hand plates, I can also share with you that, and I don't know if you can see it, but in this area here, it's thicker than in this area here. So when I hold the two thumbs up together, can you see that? It's very slight, but it's still noticeable to me. Well, this hand, being my right hand, is governed by my left brain. Well, I have no problem talking about what I know, but when I measure on my right hand, I don't get as strong of a connection in my mouth because I'm not as strong in communicating my emotions. So if we look at the side of the brain and what side of the body it governs, then we do get a bit more information if we do use both hand sensors. But again, what you've got to look at is the whole area, because the neck is connected to the shoulder, it's connected to the mouth. So start looking in this area. And if we look at the Neanderthal man, they had very thick necks, but now our neck is getting thinner and thinner. And I have my own concept on this, is that as we get more intuitive, we're going to be losing more of our capabilities of expression. So therefore, it could be natural that people are losing energy in this area to rely more on their intuition.
Great. All right.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
So do more research on that. So I want to move forward, because I want to make sure that we we don't go too much overtime today. I know we're going to go overtime. I'm kind of planning for an hour, hour and a half. Last week we went into 2 hours, so I'm going to try to keep it under an hour and a half. So going back to the reading, we can again understand, you know, the spiritual depths of this person, plus some of the psychosomatic information that this person could be experiencing, and about their personality. And again, refer to your pages in regards to the characteristics of the color, and it can tell you more. But I just want to run through every color quickly to give you a quick synopsis. So when we see gray in the brain, this is indicating that the consciousness isn't aligned to the superconsciousness or the subconsciousness, that basically there's a repression in one's thoughts capabilities, and that can result in depression. Sometimes it's as simple as poor memory, or negative thoughts, more in regards to the cup being half empty rather than half full. And again, it's bringing to the forefront some of the possibilities to people so they understand how they might be perceived. And one of the things that I tell everyone is whatever I see in your aura is what other people are sensing and feeling. You may not necessarily understand this from your own perspective because, again, if you're not aligned with it, then you're not going to understand it. So often when people say, well, I don't think I'm depressed, and as I hear them talking, I'll go, okay, you may not see it as depression, but I do. And here's why I see it as depression. Or you may not think you're negative, but here's why I think you're negative. Okay. And so therefore, sometimes you have to call people on it, and people will say, oh, I've got a great memory. And I'll say, well, do you sometimes forget where you put the car keys? Yeah. Okay. Well, that is symbolic of, you know, not being able to, you know, remember things, whether it's short memory or long memory. But nonetheless, you know, people have to understand that when we see that gray, that, you know, it can reflect some of these characteristics of the personality. Whereas when I see red in the head, on the positive side, red is, you know, that optimistic realist. And Nikolai is a red person, and of course he can get irritated on one hand, but mainly he's a very positive red. And what I love about him is the fact that, you know, he'll wake up in the morning and it's like, what a beautiful day. I wonder what today's going to bring. You know, it's that realist of optimism. And it's a very practical and fair energy, you know, which, you know, also, if you get into couple counseling or counseling with families and, you know, parents and children, and you start to see patterns of consciousness with the different family members, you'll understand some of the variables. Because if you have a red person in the room and a violet person in the room, they're talking two opposite energies. Okay, they don't think alike. Red is a realist, where, you know, the violet is futuristic. Right? And so they have all these visions and all these, you know, dreams and ideals, where the realist is going, that's great to have all these thoughts and ideas, but what is the facts? Okay. You know, where the violet will go, well, whatever happens, happens. The red will go, no. I am the controller of my own destiny. You know, where the violet will say, if God wants me to learn this, God will show me the way. Well, God also wants you to take responsibility for your actions. So red is that color of, you know, passion and motivation and drive, and it is a very fair person. But again, on the negative side, it could be somebody who's very opinionated, very dictatorial. It could be very domineering. It could be a bully, and it could also be an abuser. And this is why a lot of people disconnect from red, because and a lot of us have experienced that negative red. But remember, once you understand the polarity of the color, then you can understand not everybody is going to be this way. But we make judgments about colors, and that means we make judgment about people, that if anybody's ever taken advantage of us in a negative way, where they've either hit us or they've tried to control us emotionally, mentally, or spiritually. And sometimes on a spiritual level, it can be religion-based, you know, because there are some cultures that don't let women flourish as individuals, but repress women. So that, to me, would be that red negative spiritual abuse. So nonetheless, that red can be an abuser. And if you've had any kind of, you know, mind, body, or spirit abuse, then you could get scared of the red because you see that red as an abusing color. And out of all the color abuses, red is the most physically felt. Okay, so therefore it will scare people in their life. And so therefore, again, the root chakra is that life energy. So when we see that red in the aura and it's not a positive red, then we can understand there can be some abuses that have happened in that red energy in relationship to wherever we see it. As well as we can see if the root chakra is below 40%, that there could have been some challenges in that person's life with some negative red. And so therefore that can disturb the security and the safetiness of the energy. But when you have a positive red in your aura, then that is denoting that you're strong and healthy in regards to the foundation and the building blocks of the red energy. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so then when we move along to the orange energy, when I see orange in the head, I love orange because to me it is the ultimate creative color. It is the color of joy, and it's that childlike innocence. And I love children who, express that orange energy because they're so playful and they're so honest in their words, and they're just a delight to be around because everything is new and everything is positive, and children live in the moment. And so as adults, when we see orange in the energy, these are people who are spontaneous and living in the moment and the power of the now. And it's a very physical, creative energy, and that physical creativity extends into the arts. It could be people who work really well with their hands. And in fact, even massage therapists that are very attuned into the red and orange energy, they give the best massages because they know how to, they know where to go, and they know how much pressure to apply. It's a beautiful energy when it comes to any kind of working abilities with the hand. On the negative side, it's people who have that childlike energy where they don't take responsibility. Well, that's not me. I didn't do that. And children do that when they're young. So a lot of times when you think about that child and how they deny, that's also the same of the orange as an adult. They deny things. I didn't do that. It's not my fault. And the emotions will be extremes. 1 minute happy, sad the next minute. When you see auras that are full orange, where 80% or more of the aura is orange, these are very, very emotional people. They will probably cry at the drop of a hat. Okay, they see a commercial, and the commercial strikes a chord, they'll cry. They cry out a lot. So therefore that indicates that emotional imbalance. And of course we can also assess that as, bipolar, because again, that bipolar tendency is, being happy 1 minute, sad the next, being happy 1 minute, angry the next. And I could tell you, because of the amount of people I've taught in classes, and I really appreciate when people are honest, in classroom environments where they tell stories. And I had this one natural orange person in my class, and she said, Suzanne, when I was a child, I was so disruptive that my parents didn't know how to handle me because I would slam my hands down. I would grab onto cupboard doors and rip them off because it can be a very destructive energy. And think of that child having that temper tantrum, and being stuck in a spot, not wanting to move. That is that negative side of that orange energy. Now, moving on to yellow, that yellow personality, it's a very optimistic energy. It's the glasses, overflowing. It's not half full, it's overflowing. It's like the sunlight. It likes to, be very, spread happiness, spread joy from that yellow perspective. Yellow also loves to teach. This is my gift, to be able to teach in a scientific way, because I don't like to teach just based from my violet, because then it would be based more, on my experiences through my intuitive ability rather than my experiences through evidence. And I can tell you, because I've taught thousands of people, the colors that I see in the aura do truly relate to their personality. And we offer a color psychology test, which I'm not going to go into here, but you know, at some point I'll introduce you more to this psychology test, because you can use it with the Biopulsar to really affirm, you know, how people think through their color intelligence centers versus estimating, you know, their usage of color based on their aura perspective, because sometimes their color personality is not always reflected in their aura, because if we're seeing their aura based more on the circumstances at the time versus how you think through your energy centers is a little different, because you are who you are. And, you know, we need to discern that. However, when we see an aura that's predominant in one color, we can actually, you know, come to the conclusion that they radiate that frequency in all aspects of their life. So, you know, with the yellow, it is that energy of knowledge. And when we see an abundance of it in the aura, these are people who are very controlling in their personality and also very judgmental, very critical. And because I'm a strong yellow, it is a lot of times self-abuse, you know, in regards to, I'm very critical towards, you know, myself, because I am a perfectionist. So when I do things that are less than perfect, then I can be self-critical. You know, so again, when you see a lot of yellow in the aura, it is somebody who's very controlling, and that will extend into their capabilities of, you know, any word to do with self is often yellow. Self-analyzing, self-critical, self-esteem, self-confidence. Words that have to do with the word self are related to the yellow indigo intelligence. Moving on to green. Green, of course, is the balancer, and these are people who are very nurturing, very heart-based. They give a lot. They're constant givers. They're, you know, the caregivers. They often will work in nursing as well, or some capacity where they're giving back, and it could be even like donation work, because money isn't typically important to the green person unless they want money to support the family. Then their green will attach to money. But a lot of green people, you know, will find people who have money in life, you know, because they are the volunteers. So obviously, to do a lot of that volunteer work, they need to make sure that they're self-supported. And mothers often really contribute to the green energy when they're in that state of motherhood. You'll often see a lot of that green energy. Now, on the imbalance side, these are people who would be imbalanced because they're always trying to achieve balance. I don't know if that makes sense, but you know, often with green people, they don't know how to say no because they always want to be in balance. One person wants them to do this, one person wants them to do that. So they're always trying to please everyone else, finding that balance, whatever it is, which then creates an imbalance in their energy because they're always giving, and they're not taking back to themselves. What else can I tell you about the green? Yeah, very nurturing. On the negative, they could be very sloppy as well, because green out of all the colors is not necessarily the best house cleaner. Okay, so I just had to mute everyone again. I was hearing some background noise. But green out of all the colors, because sometimes they're so wrapped up in helping everyone else, they're not going to be as tidy because they put everybody else as a priority rather than other things in their life. So they wouldn't make like good bookkeepers and stuff like that either. Now, the blue energy is the most organized energy. It is also the best friend you can have. They're very loyal and dedicated. However, if you break their trust, they will never trust you again, because trust is something you have to earn. And so if you break that trust, they're not readily going to trust you again, unless they have another energy that's supporting them. But when you see the whole aura blue, then I guarantee you that they have cut out a lot of people in their life because the trust was broken. You know, and again, because they are very loyal and dedicated, they do make true really true good friends. Blue people are also caregivers, but in another sense. The green is more that nurturer, the blue is more the provider. A lot of blue people are very successful, which is helpful. If you want to make money, you better have your ducks in a row, and that is that blue energy. So a lot of people in power positions where they're leading a company will be strong blue people, because it's the blue people that know how to delegate and they know how to plan and organize. Now, if you've ever visited a blue person's house, you will see that they'll be spotless. A couple of the homes that I've gone into that are people who are extreme blue people, they don't even have a salt and pepper shaker on their counter. They don't have a newspaper on their coffee table. It's very sanitary. And a lot of blue people will have OCD addictions, where cleanliness, for example, will be to the excess. You know, so even when pre-COVID, people who walked around with masks, that would have indicated the blue person. And because of the, you know, the COVID pan-epidemic of what's going on, a lot of people now are becoming germophobics. So we're sort of in this, you know, negative blue energy, because we're creating this fear-based condition. You know, blue people aren't always the most social. So again, you can see how that identifies with COVID. Okay, moving on to the indigo. I think I already talked about that, so I don't want to spend too much time, but that's people who are very empathetic. A lot of psychics will also show a lot of indigo in the body, and that can create a lot of imbalance, because then their body's always working overtime on that intuitive level. But when you do see it in the body, that could also be reflecting that they're picking up a lot of psychosomatic information from the people that they're around or the environment, which is now affecting them physically. Okay? And violet is a very creative energy. It's a very spiritual minded energy. It is the energy that channels a lot, and that comes in the way of new ideas. So they often have a lot of new ideas. But I always remember Danielle in her office, you know, making a comment, and I relate it to the violet energy, where, you know, if you were a dog, it would be like bird, squirrel, food, master, you know, where the attention span is very short, because as fast as they have ideas is as fast as their mind changes. And this is why when we see a lot of high frequency colors in the brain, and especially again with the brow and the crown chakra being at high levels, but the high energies in the brain indicate somebody who changes their mind a lot. Okay, and they can't hold thoughts very long. The average person holds a thought for 3 seconds. People who have a high state of consciousness in their upper chakras would probably hold a thought for 1 second or less. Okay, so you can imagine that when your head is beaming a lot of frequencies, you may not realize it, but other people may see that you're a little bit all over the place. Okay, and remember, there's no right or wrong. It's about how the energy is being perceived. So I have people that say to me, oh no, I'm grounded, and I'll go, no, you're not, because I can see that their eyes are darting all over, or they're interrupting me by asking me the next question, because they already understand the answer, because they've intuitive what I'm going to say. So they're interrupting me and asking me the next question. That is somebody who's operating at a high frequency. So one of the things I'll say to people who have a lot of power in their brain, you have to understand that most people aren't like you. And so therefore you have to slow down the way you are communicating, because they will see you as flighty and disconnected. They don't understand that you're already intuiting the conversation and you're on to the next thing. And, you know, again, I also let these people know that when they ask me a lot of questions, then I also know that they're not going to remember a lot of what I'm saying, because again, it's about retaining the thoughts, not just using and abusing them, right? Because again, when your head is full of so many thoughts, how are you possibly going to process them? You're not. Okay? So now we're going to go quickly into the body dynamics, and a lot of what I've just said in regards to the color now extends into the different parts of the body and the different areas, the different systems, the different chakras. And again, this is how I view everything on a multidimensional level. But again, I use my intuition when I do readings, so it's not like I obsess about one thing and that's got to be it for everyone. You got to remember the norm is created to give us a baseline of understanding, but because everybody's an individual, not everything for each person is going to be the same. And this is why on an intuitive level, the more you can work intuitively, the more you can ascertain about the person's condition or situation. But the next thing I look at is I look at the aura. I call it sort of like the outer aura, where above the head is the umbrella, the side is the belly and the chest average, and underneath is the average area of the legs. I look at it as sort of the body, mind, and spirit connection. And the more these colors are in a similar frequency, then the more I understand the body, mind, and spirit connection. But as I mentioned earlier, the brain is totally disconnected from the rest of the body, because the main colors of the brain are not what we're seeing in the body. And so therefore, the way the person thoughts and thinks and believes and emotes and intuits is differently than the way the body is perceiving the information. Now, because we see green on the outer edges here, there is a lot of balance in the person's life. However, the way their thoughts are interacting with their balance of, you know, the mind, the emotions, and the body is a little bit different in characteristic to the spirit. Does that make sense? And the more you ask questions, the more this will make sense to you. So again, it's just the different color combinations I look at. I don't go heavy into that because that's just sort of indicating that body, mind, and spirit balance. So sometimes I just use that for ammunition in my conversation with them. Now, more importantly, this area here, and if I click on it, you'll notice when I scroll down to the organ. Oh, hang on here, wrong one. I'm just going to move this
I don't
down.
think we can see your icon, like your.
Yeah,
icon.
that's why I'm scrolling down. But whether I click on this yellow or I go down to where the spine is, you will actually see that's where I was clicking. Okay.
We're not seeing the change when you're changing to see a new.
Nothing's changing on the screen.
Nothing's changing on the screen. We're just seeing a constant.
Oh, well, thank you for telling me that. Hang on.
So I'm like, I don't see your cursor or anything. Like, I don't see.
Okay, I understand what could have been happening.
All
Okay,
right.
now can you see it?
No, now we're seeing people.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
we see big pictures of us now.
Yeah.
Okay, hang on. I'll get you back. Screen share. Okay, that's that. Okay. Oh, there we go. Maybe I had it on the wrong window. Ha! Okay, now can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for telling me that. Okay, I mean, we've been talking about the same picture for the last hour, so thankfully that's the only reason why. But now when we go back to what I was showing you, then we can see that when I click on the yellow area here, it shows up as blue in the organ analysis. Okay, so this area here on this side and this area here on this side are both the spine. And to me, that's really important to look at the health of the spine, because the spine tells us their chi, which is their life force, and it also tells us the health of their blood. Okay, so when I see it yellow, this tells me that the blood is a little toxic, because the color yellow on a physical level is toxicity. And I'll just quickly give you a synopsis of that. When we see gray in the body, it means dehydration, lack of energy, low energy. Whereas when we see red, it is also low energy, and it can reflect heat and inflammation. Orange is a water imbalance. Yellow is toxicity and parasitic activity. Green, turquoise are in the neutral range. Blue is a little bit cool on the organ. Indigo is starting to get colder in the organ. Violet is cold in the organ. And when we get to white, it becomes a hot cold. Okay, and the only way I can describe it is this happens to my feet sometimes where my feet are burning, but they're cold. Okay, it's a hot coldness, and sometimes it can come in the form of sharp pain. Okay, so in a nutshell, that's how I would read the spine, is what I'm seeing in regards to the vitality. And of course, there's more to that because, you know, again, we've got to note that there's a lot more when it comes to the physicality of each color, but in a synopsis, you know, I just wanted to go quickly over the colors. So yellow in the spine tells me that there's probably a bit of toxicity in the blood and that the energy is weaker in the spine because yellow is just slightly below the green normal area. So that's a little bit of hypoactivity. So this is telling me that this person's a little tired in regards to the chi. If I see orange, red, or gray is denoting the more tired they are. When my spine goes gray, I am exhausted. Okay, and because I am what I call a fun workaholic, I love my work, so to me it's fun. It's not always perceived as work unless Nikolai tells me to do something, then that's the boss coming down on me and then it's not as fun. But when I do things like this, I love it. So, you know, I'm willing to exert a lot of energy when I'm in my yellow. And so I don't feel it as a tiredness, that's a negativity, but when it goes gray, that means I'm on burnout. I've been, you know, doing the candle on both ends. So we don't want to see gray in the spine because that's just telling us we're way too tired. And again, you know, in regards to the blood, that would also reflect that the blood is tired when we see gray in that area. Versus if we see a lot of high energy colors in there, that means that the blood could be trying to clean itself. Okay, and as well as you can also feel tired when you're at a hyperactive level. It's kind of like if you're running and running and running and running, you start to get tired because you're always running on fast. Does that make sense? Okay, so likewise, we don't want to see high energies in the spine just as much as we don't want to see low energies. Now, also, I can tell you when you see the spine being a dark, dirty color, the blood is very dirty. Now, imagine how that person's going to feel. And sometimes when the life force is weak, the person is starting to check out. Now, that doesn't mean that people can't rebound, because with me, I get a good night's sleep, but sometimes there's that exhaustedness, right? But for some people, if they're in that gray state in the spine for any length of duration, then they may want to check out, meaning that they're suicidal. But this is where you have to be very careful with your intuition as to how you want to approach that. But I will get very strong hits when I feel that people are suicidal. And again, I can always see it in the spine as a very, very deep gray color, a dirty color. Okay. Now, I had done this. A friend of mine, her mother was showing gray in the spine, and because of her physical disabilities, I knew she was checking out in life, and she died within a few months. So again, we have to understand, you know, the age of the person. If we're starting to see gray, then that means that they're preparing for death, whether it's conscious or unconscious. And also when people are struggling in life, then we may see gray there because they may see the grass is greener on the other side. Okay, but tread very carefully with that. If you're suspecting, you know, suicidal tendencies, just start asking questions in a roundabout way, like, are you feeling disconnected in life? You know, is life a struggle for you? Okay, and then you'll get people, you know, telling you their situation. But like I said, if it's just something that you're seeing as gray and the person is just depleted of energy, you know, trust that, right? That in most cases, and let's just say, you know, 99% of the time, gray is just exhaustion. Okay, but that 1%, it could be a struggle in life. When I'm reading the aura, I always go from the root chakra up. And what I do is I just scan areas to see if there's any areas that I want to address in the root. So the first area I would come to is the gray, because obviously to me, that's telling me, you know, something else is going on. And when I click on the gray, and I have to go back there, it's the hip. Okay. And usually you can see where the area right here, that's the hip area. But because AuraMed created the software where the aura is floating, it's literally looping the last second or two, because she wanted to show how the energy is in constant motion. And so therefore that living aura exists. So in the area of the hip, we see gray, and the hips are about how hip we are in life. And when people become inflexible in life, then we'll see that the gray, that the hips will become stagnant with energy. And of course, when we see gray, that is extreme stagnation. So this is indicating the person isn't so hip. But if they live in that fantasy world of the indigo and they're not always in the physical reality, you can understand where that stiffness would come in, because they're just not dealing with life. Okay, and ultimately, again, because it's connected to the root chakra, we have to take responsibility for our life. But a lot of people don't want to take responsibility for their life, so they'll often blame circumstances. I inherited this disorder. I, have no control because I'm not, in control of my money. I don't have a good job. They'll blame everything else in their life. You control your own destiny. And the stronger your root chakra is, and the more you're connected to that red positive vibration, it will drive you to be very successful in life. You'll get everything that you want, because you will be able to manifest it. But because most people's root chakra is under 40%, in a way I say to people, that tells me that, you're on the low side of manifestation. The lower the number is in the root chakra, the less they'll manifest. And because in the hip area, if we see that the person isn't very hip, it blocks them from moving forward in life, because when the hips are in balance, people can walk freely forward in life. Okay. And we're hitting the 1.5 hour mark. So I'm just going to quickly wind this up, because as you can imagine, there's a lot we can say about an aura, right? So I just continue to go up, and I look at the things that are of a lower frequency ultimately. So the kidney is in red. The kidney is about the kid in you. So in red, this tells me that the person has a lot of passion, but it's a little bit dark in hue. It's not like a true red. A true red is an orange red, okay? Whereas a blue red is a little bit more distorted. So a real red is an orange red, because if you think of the color orange, orange is red and yellow, where indigo is red and blue. So this has a little bit of a blue tune to it. So it's not as positive as a red, because the positive red would be more of that orange red. So this person could be feeling a little frustration. Now I want you to notice another thing, and this is what I do in my consultations. That red of the kidney is also the same red of the armpit. This is an energy pattern. So now you can start marrying up the two organs together to build a better conclusion. So if this person isn't having as much fun in their life, and it could be because they're not taking responsibility of their life, or they're taking too much responsibility in their life. And that means maybe they're, taking on the responsibility of others. The armpit is also about one's reflection. So maybe they don't want to show people their truth, and so therefore they're repressing themselves. Okay, does that make sense? Maybe they're not having as much fun in life because they're always trying to be perfect to everyone else. Okay, so this is
Suzanne?
Sure.
Can I ask a question? When I'm looking at an aura, like right now, in the kidney area, the orange is right going alongside that.
Yeah.
I always, and this is on the intuitive level, And seeing, what we've been talking about, this woman, is that line that's going across there. I always see it as they're not in their body. Like this is what's, this is the line that's coming across that's stopping them from being there.
Mm-hmm. And this is where when you're doing a reading, and that's what your intuition is sharing with you, go with it, because I don't know all the answers.
Yeah.
So you're actually teaching me something. So thank you for that.
Yeah, it's just, because we're talking about, her lower sexual chakra, root chakra, both of those, and the disconnect, and I'm seeing on the left, her neck is really low. So she's not in her body.
Yeah.
And that's,
well, and absolutely true, because remember how I said the brain frequencies are quite different than the physical frequencies.
right.
Because from the neck down is your physical body. When we start going more to the spiritual aspect of our essence, that's more the upper chakras, which are less physical in nature.
Right.
So,
Right.
that's a really good assessment. Thanks, Teresa.
Yeah. I see that actually a lot, and I wanted to just talk about it because I just wanted to see if anybody else saw that as well.
Yeah. And if we look at the fact what organ is showing up as white, we see it's in the descending colon. So this is also illustrating that she might have some holes in her descending colon, which could result in leaky gut. So we would be talking maybe on a diet level, if she's eating well enough to support her physicality. Okay. So we can see that toxicity is also in the armpit area. So I would be actually giving her some recommendations, maybe to, brush skin. I teach people to even slap their underarms because it brings the life force back. Even scratching in the armpit area will raise the blood, because wherever there's blood, illness cannot exist. So when the energy goes down in an area, then of course there's that, that's when the energy can get stagnant. And because red is a lower frequency, the next color beside red is gray. So as soon as it hits gray, then we know that there's going to be a toxic dump there. So right now that it can be what's happening. But again, imagine somebody who's not self-reflecting, because in a way I view the armpit of, do you really want to show your stink to other people? Right? So a lot of people mask that area. They block it by putting deodorant on. The reality is if we're not feeding our body, if we're not loving ourselves well enough, then again, that's going to reflect in some way, and it will reflect in our body odor, which we often see in the armpit region. So I actually tell people it's good to stop using deodorant and just smell yourself, and even get your partner or your kids or other family members or a good friend to smell you, because you want to understand if you're aligned with your truth, because the armpit is your self-identity. It's how you reflect yourself to the world. But if you don't want to reflect to the people around you some of your negativity or some of your negative sides, then you're holding all this back. There's nothing wrong with emotions, whether we call them negative or positive. Because remember, for example, anger can fuel you. It's only anger where we become destructive, where we hurt others physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually, that red anger would be negative. But if we use that red anger to drive us, and it becomes something within us of going, you know what, I am so angry, I am going to prove them wrong. You're not mad maybe at anyone per se, but you're mad at yourself because you're wanting to do something, and that anger will drive you. So if we think of all our emotions and our thoughts as being a driving force in some way, then we look at it as a way that we can actually get what we accomplish. If I didn't know that I am critical, how can I be non-critical? Right? You have to understand the duality of the energy. So whenever I become critical, I go, ha ha ha, yellow, I know you're trying to catch me. And because I know you, we're going to bring in some green love. Because when we bring in that self-love, how can we be critical? We can't. It's all love. right? And this is why working with the products that are matching the vibration of the intention, we can create more balance. I tell everyone, had I not bathed in the yellow frequency for 7 months, honest to goodness, 2 to 3 times a week, I would bathe in the yellow color bath and put in my yellow oils, and I would meditate on that yellow energy. Do you think I would understand myself as well as I do today if I did not make friends with my yellow intelligence? My solar plexus sometimes gets the best of me, and that ego gets very strong, and it drives me to the point where I become so obsessed to finish projects and tasks. I will stay up to all hours, which is another yellow tendency. You know, it's all about time. We'll use time to our advantage, but then I'll stop the self-nurturing where I get the good night's sleeps. Right? And so we've got to look at everything in balance. So I had to make friends with my yellow. And the only way I could have done it was by immersing myself in that color vibration constantly. And because 90% of our body is water, bathing in the water element with a natural, non-organic or natural organic color pigment, you're lying in that vibration where those vibrations are going into your, through your skin and into all cells of your body. That is power. This is the whole reason why Inger made Color Bath. And then by adding oils and essences and other yellow tools or color tools in your life, you can get to where you want to go. But it took me 7 months to make friends with my yellow, to really understand that negative side of myself. But if I would have avoided that yellow, and this is what we tend to do, we try to fight a battle with the wrong frequency. When your root chakra is weak, the only frequency you need is red. And you have to understand that that root chakra is your physical vitality. Yes, other chakras connect to the physical organs, but it is the last layer of protection around you, which is going to be an upcoming Zoom class that we're going to be talking about. So when I end a reading, I always end it by saying to the client, do you have one final question? I do not say, do you have questions? Okay, because then you're opening up a can of worms, because those that like to ask a lot of questions, and during your consultation, I hope you've been asking a lot of questions. So at the end, do you have one final question? Sometimes it will extend into another one. But again, you're setting your boundaries, because otherwise, especially if you're low in the root, you don't know how to shut people down by saying, okay, time's up, right? But you are a practitioner. You have to take your time serious. When clients pay for a certain amount of time, give them that, and respect everybody else that's coming to you afterwards, because the worst thing is when somebody feels shorted. My girlfriend had a 5-minute reading, and they paid for 30 minutes, and mine was 25. Okay, how do you think people are going to feel if you extend your services more to someone else? So you have to get your timelines down packed when you're doing readings, out of respect of everyone. So for example, allot yourself a time frame for questions and answers, or for product or treatment recommendations, or what you're going to do next. So I always end the session with, do you have one final question? And then I give them all the next steps. So I always let people know what tools are going to support them based on what I see. And with this person, I would go right to the root chakra and tell them that they need red energy, because I'm seeing a void there. There's a void of red energy. There's a hole in the root chakra because we're seeing gray. We need to get that life force back intact. They need to start taking responsibility for their physical world, and not always live with their head in the clouds, or their head with their empathy or their psychic energy, or however you want to describe it to them. So I would be recommending red color bath, the chi energy, the red essence, the red spiritual spray. I would be telling them to eat more red foods. Everything that I recommend, which is, the charts that I've given you for the product recommendations. I think you guys are seeing it backwards, but hopefully you can read things backwards. It says, chakra remedies. So everything, you know, in regards to the colors that will help support people, whether it's foods or herbs or teas or gemstones or color bathing or, you know, red oils. And this is why we've color coded our whole product line. So it makes it really easy for you to recommend products to people, which, by the way, we also have started an affiliate program. If you don't want to sell products direct to your clients, recommend the products, tell them to shop online, and you will get a kickback of the retail sale. Okay, so you can ask me more about that after, but that's now available in North America. Diego, it's not set up in Europe, and Hunneman and Beverly, sorry, it's not set up in Australia. I'm not seeing everybody online, so I don't know everybody who's here, but whatever country you're in right now, we're only set up for the affiliate program in Canada and the States. But as we build our online presence, then the affiliate program will be offered elsewhere. We are setting up the program in Europe, just so you know. But I don't think the affiliate program is yet online because there's more countries that they have to deal with. They're going to have to figure that one out. So after I do the product recommendations, the next thing I do is I tell them the next step. The next step is when I want to see them again, because I want them to do the homework and come back and see me. Now, if there's a lot of dysfunction that we've covered in the session and you're getting a sense that they need more emotional support, you might have them come back in 3 to 4 weeks. For yellow and blue people, if you tell them to come back in 6 weeks, that would be adequate because the blue and yellow people will actually do the homework. Okay? The orange person won't, because the orange person is based on whatever they feel at the moment. So they'll say, yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, I'll do it. Right? And then they walk away, and then the next time you see them, it'll be, did you do? Oh, no, you know what? I went on a trip, or I did this, you know, and everything else got in the way. So the orange people, you'd probably want to see fairly quickly, you know, and similar, the green need a lot of support because they are the supporter to everyone else, but they're not very good at their own self-support. And the indigos lose track of time, so they forget to do things. You know, so all the emotional energies, they need much more support than the red, the yellow, and the blue. And even the red, I would put in there that, you know, they will tend to do things, but they have to do a lot more of the physical things, because if it's non-physical, they just don't get it as well. And that's why sometimes I do exercises with clients in my office. So I'll stamp my feet with them, or I tell them, slap your pits. Let's do it together. Let's slap the pits. Because if they do it, then they're more likely to continue doing it in their own home. And then I let them know about what courses are coming up so they can join my courses. So similar to this, as you guys can imagine, when I do a consultation, I can teach a lot. I can teach the client about their chakra flow. I can teach the color, you know, the colors of their aura. I can go into the physicality. But when you teach classes, then people can learn as a group, as we're doing here today, right? Versus teaching people one-on-one, it's a lot more cumbersome, and you're never going to get through as much material. Either you're charging your client for an hour or two, which can be quite expensive, or you say to them, if you join one of my classes, I charge a nominal fee, whether that fee is $20 or $100. Put a value at it, include products into the price so people will get that added value. You know, include handouts. So a lot of the handouts that I talk about, I give them to my clients, you know, so this way I'm giving them information. I put a value on everything. So yes, my consultation or my class might be $100, but this is what you're also getting, right? So always give that added value to the classes. You know, and so then you're driving your product sales, you're driving your classes, and you're driving them to come back to see you. And I tell everyone, you need to come back because you need to visually see it. Especially this type of personality. Do you think they're going to remember everything? No. And do you think they're going to be able to do everything that you're telling them? No. So therefore, you want to ensure their success by saying to them, when you come back, let's see how much your energy flow has shifted. Let's see if the areas you've been working on have discontinued. And I give clients affirmations, you know, give them as much as you can to set them up for success. And you may even want to call them after the session. So this way, you know, they're feeling your love and your support. Okay? So let us open this up for more questions.
Suzanne, I have a quick question.
Sure.
So I work in a field where we see a lot of narcissistic tendencies.
Yeah.
Would that be a lot of yellow? Or would that?
Yellow or blue. And possibly, you know, again, I would go more with the left brain energies, you know, because we don't see a lot of red in the aura. You know, I can't say for sure with the red, but definitely yellow and blue because, and violet, I should say, because they're know-it-alls. So I've seen that kind of characteristics in those energies more so, the yellow, the blue, and the violet.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, you guys are so easy. Come on, throw some questions at me.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Oh, I did my own aura the other day, and because like I'm sort of moving, so I'm stuck in the moment. So there was a lot of grey in my aura. So I did a sound journey for a client that came yesterday, and it was really amazing how it changed the energy, because I work with sound, but I don't always test it on myself.
Yeah.
So normally when a client comes, I put them on and I do before and afters on the aura so they can see the improvement in their own auric field.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really amazed that it shifted most of that grey out of my auric field. So I just found that really interesting, because that's what I'm working with at the moment, the aura and the sound.
Perfect.
Changes.
So one of the things I want to share with the group is that, and I just went over this with somebody this morning that had the experience on the Biopulsar, and what they discovered was their energy didn't hold to that vibration. And this is what we're talking about, because your body will definitely be influenced by any kind of energy treatment, whether, you know, that day you ate better, whether that day you slept better, whether you're listening to sound therapy, whether you're color bathing, but it's how long you can hold that vibration. That's the question, because if there's a blockage in an area, even though you may shoot a frequency into that blockage may release for that split second, or for, you know, several hours, or even a day or two. But often a day or two later, it goes back to the way it was, because you didn't change anything in your life to create a more permanent change. And this is the beauty of the Biopulsar, because if you can get clients to come back initially, you know, within a week, you're going to see how their energy changes within a week, versus a month later. There's a lot of things that can happen during that month. But again, you're going to look at different stress factors that could be indicating that. So for example, you mentioned you moved. That is one of the biggest stresses in life. And I don't know if you guys remember, but in one of my emails, I sent out a checklist, and it was called the Daily Observation Form. And on there, it went through all these different things that can affect your energy daily. And I list all the major stressors in life: getting married, getting divorced, moving, you know, difficulties at work, a death in the family. There's so many major stressors in life that we're affected by that can deplete our energy. And remember, any kind of stress will cause malnutrition in your body. Okay, and malnutrition is what you're seeing in the gray. And this is why when you know, things are going kind of goofy in your life, you'll see more gray. And that's why when we're not doing the basic essentials of life, then we see that. But if you use oils, if you use sound therapy, even your thoughts, this is one of the things I want you guys to challenge yourself by keeping your hand on the Biopulsar and focusing on an organ that's weaker. See if you can move it just by making love to that organ, by saying to that organ, I love you. I love, you know, for example, hips, I love you. You know what? Sometimes you're the hippest person that I know. You know, you want to move your body, you want to dance, you want to do these different things. You know, you want to move forward in life. Hips, I love you. You're great, you know, and whatever it is, talk to that organ and you will see that organ respond. But you got to understand, you still have these unconscious beliefs and programming, and that even includes inherited factors, which we can all change. Hereditary factors. It takes 6 generations to create a hereditary factor. okay? But you can start the shift to reverse that. You know, we have all the power in the world. Our mind and our alignment with God and spirit is so strong. You know, God wants us to achieve in this life, but it's our belief that, oh my goodness, I inherited this from my family dynamic, so I'll never be successful in there. I am telling you, you can reverse anything, because we call them miracles, right? But really, when you put your mind to it, you can create anything. Your mind is stronger than anything. Anything. Okay. So I hope that kind of just adds to what I'm saying. Keep doing your sound therapy, Beverly. Now, I will say one thing. Light therapy penetrates mass. Sound bounces off of mass. This is a scientific fact. So I love light therapy because it can penetrate mass, where sound can still get to the area of distortment, because obviously sound waves will travel in your body as well. But the more you can work with light therapy, the more you can work with all these different energy modalities, the more success you'll have.